This is SpaceTime Series 28, Episode 129, for broadcast on the 3rd of November 2025. Coming up on SpaceTime, Interstellar Comet 3I Atlas passes behind the Sun with no signs of any alien life forms. 2 dwarf galaxies linked by a massive intergalactic bridge. And could volcanic eruptions have delivered hidden ice to the Martian equator? All that and more coming up on SpaceTime.
Welcome to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary.
Interstellar Comet 3I Atlas has reached its perihelion, marking its closest position to the Sun. Despite a lot of ill-informed media speculation, the close encounter didn't cause the comet to deviate from its expected trajectory or its 68.3 km per second velocity. There was no sudden manoeuvring towards the Earth, no slowing down, and no abrupt turns. It behaved exactly as it should have, and not, as some have speculated, like an alien spacecraft. So unless Klingons or Kardashians make a sudden appearance, it should pass safely by the Earth on December the 19th, marking its closest approach at a distance of 268 million kilometres. 3I Atlas is only the third known interstellar comet to visit our solar system. There undoubtedly have been many others, but we weren't able to detect them until now. Meanwhile, a report in the astrophysical journal Letters claims astronomers have detected ultraviolet signatures of water emanating from the interstellar visitor. The study's authors used NASA's Swift Space Telescope to undertake the first ever detection of hydroxyl gas from this object, a commonly used chemical fingerprint for water. The discovery is considered a major breakthrough for understanding how the interstellar comet evolved. For millions, possibly billions of years, this fragment of ice and dust has been travelling between the stars. Because it's orbiting above Earth's atmosphere, the Swift Space Telescope is able to capture wavelengths of light that would be absorbed before they reach the Earth's surface, and therefore unseen by ground-based observatories. In solar system comets, water is a yardstick by which astronomers measure their overall activity and track how sunlight drives the release of other gases. It's the chemical benchmark that anchors every comparison of volatile ices in a comet's nucleus. Finding the same signal in an interstellar object means that, for the first time, astronomers can begin to place 3I Atlas on the same scale they use to study native solar system comets. And that's considered a step towards comparing chemistry of planetary systems right across the galaxy. What makes 3I Atlas remarkable is where its water activity occurs. The Swift telescope observations are detecting hydroxyls when the comet was still 3 times further from the Sun than the Earth. That's well beyond the region where water ice on a comet's surface can easily sublimate into space. Swift was able to measure a water loss rate of about 40 kilograms per second. That's roughly the output of a fire hose running at full blast. The thing is, at those sort of distances, most solar system comets are still quiet. So, the strong ultraviolet signal from Atlas suggests that something else is at work. Perhaps sunlight's heating small icy grains released from the nucleus, allowing them to vaporize and feed the surrounding cloud of gas. Such extended sources of water have only ever been seen in a handful of distant comets, and they point to complex layered ices that preserve clues about how these objects are formed. Each interstellar comet discovered so far has revealed a different side of planetary chemistry beyond our Sun. Together, they demonstrate that the building blocks of comets and the volatile ices that shape them can vary dramatically from one star system to the next. And these differences hint at how diverse planet-forming environments can be, and how processes like temperature, radiation and composition sculpt the materials that ultimately seed planets and potentially life. One of the study's authors, Dennis Bodwitz from Auburn University, says the detection of water, or its faint ultraviolet echo, hydroxyls, from this interstellar comet tells science that the ingredients for life's chemistry are not unique to our solar system. He says every interstellar comet so far has been a surprise. 1I Oumuamua was dry. 2I Borisov was rich in carbon monoxide. And now 3i Atlas is giving up water at a distance where astronomers didn't expect it. So each is rewriting what astronomers thought they knew about planets and comets, how they form around different stars. It's a fascinating discovery. This is SpaceTime. Still to come, 2 dwarf galaxies linked by a massive intergalactic bridge, and a new study suggests that violent volcanic eruptions may have delivered hidden ice to the Martian equator. All that and more still to come on SpaceTime. Astronomers have discovered a colossal bridge of neutral hydrogen gas linking 2 distant dwarf galaxies. This immense structure spans an astonishing 185,000 light-years between galaxies NGC 4532 and DDO 137, which are each located around 53 million light-years away. The findings, reported in the monthly notices of the Royal Astronomical Society, also revealed a vast tail of gas accompanying the bridge extending 1.6 million light-years and making it the longest ever observed. The study's lead author, Mr. Stuart Smith from the University of Western Australia node of the International Centre for Radio Astronomy Research, says the discovery marks a significant step forward in understanding how galaxies interact. He says the modelling shows that the tidal forces acting between these galaxies, alongside their proximity to the massive Virgo Cluster, is a crucial role in the gas dynamics observed. As the 2 galaxies orbit around each other and move towards the hot gas cloud surrounding the Virgo Cluster, which is some 200 times hotter than the surface of the Sun, they experience ram pressure, which strips and heats the gas from the galaxies. Stuart Smith says the density of electrons and the speed at which the galaxies are falling into the hot gas cloud are enough to explain why so much gas has been pulled away from the galaxies and into the bridge and surrounding areas. The observations were part of Wallaby, the wide-field Australian Square Kilometre Array Pathfinder L-band Legacy All-Sky Survey. This large-scale project maps the sky and studies the distribution of hydrogen gas in galaxies. Stuart Smith and colleagues detected the colossal gas formations by using high-resolution observations of neutral hydrogen. Neutral hydrogen plays a crucial role in the formation of stars, making this finding fundamental to understanding how galaxies interact and evolve, especially in dense environments. Stuart Smith says the system has strong similarities with our own Milky Way galaxy and 2 of its satellite galaxies, the Large and Small Magellanic Clouds. He says understanding these gas bridges and their dynamics provides crucial insights into how galaxies evolve over time, how galactic gas is redistributed in the cosmos, and the varying conditions under which galaxies may or may not form stars.
We found a couple of very interesting dwarf galaxies, very normal-looking dwarf galaxies in optical images. What we found recently was a large bridge of gas which extended between them, and we saw this bridge using some new observations that we made with the ASCAP, the Australia SKA Pathfinder telescope.
What's that telling you about the relationship between these 2 galaxies?
So these 2 galaxies are both known to be in the vicinity of what we call the Virgo Cluster of galaxies. And we believe that these galaxies were or are falling into the Virgo cluster of galaxies. And by falling in, I mean in a very high speed, something like 800 kilometers per second. But not only that, these dwarf galaxies appear to be interacting with each other as they fall towards this cluster. And our understanding of this interaction has raised this huge bridge of gas between both galaxies. So, therefore they're tightly coupled together. They've been orbiting each other for some time. And this bridge of gas is really a tide, what we call a tide, a bit like the Earth, Moon, Ocean tide, except that tide has created a massive bridge that extends all the way between the two galaxies, and that tide is made of hydrogen gas, which is the main element that the universe consists of.
And we've seen similar effects closer to home with the large and small Magellanic Clouds and how they interact with each other, and also how they're both interacting with the Milky Way.
Yes, of course, one of our nearest extragalactic neighbours is the large and small Magellanic Clouds. Well, it's not known if they're actually in orbit around the Milky Way or if they're falling in for the first time, but in both cases they're interacting strongly with each other and strongly with the Milky Way. And in that case, we're seeing tidal interaction between the galaxies, and we're seeing the effect of gas being stripped off both galaxies as they plummet into the halo of our own Milky Way galaxy. And it's kind of the same situation here, where we have a couple of dwarf galaxies interacting with each other very strongly, but also plummeting in at a much higher speed, of course, to this Virgo cluster of galaxies. And what that tells us is not only how strongly these galaxies are interacting with each other, but also that the Virgo cluster, this giant cluster of galaxies, has an even more giant halo of hot gas around the cluster. And even though the dwarf galaxy pair is some distance away from the Virgo cluster, it can still detect the drag of this gaseous halo as the galaxies plummet into the cluster. And this halo that the Virgo cluster has is only a couple of atoms per cubic meter of space. So it's very, very tenuous, but at this speed it's enough to cause significant interaction effects.
And that's causing the heating.
Yes, that tiny amount of gas combined with that huge speed is enough to cause heating of the dwarf galaxy pair, heating of the halo that's around the dwarf galaxy pair, stripping of this hydrogen that's been raised by this tidal interaction between them, and has created a very long tail, about 1.5 million light years long, that extends behind the dwarf galaxy pair as it plummets into the Virgo cluster. So it's this complex interaction between galaxies and between galaxies and clusters that's kind of typical of the forces that happen in galaxies as they evolve in the universe. And this particular system is just a spectacular example of the complexity of that interaction, and being able to use our new observations to understand it in more detail has been quite rewarding.
And all this hot gas, you see, this hot hydrogen you're finding, this is part of the missing mass in the universe. I'm not talking about dark matter here. I'm talking about missing baryonic matter that scientists have been looking for so long.
Yes, that's right. The universe, of course, mainly consists of ordinary matter, in the universe is ordinary atomic matter, mainly hydrogen and helium, of course. That missing ordinary matter mostly lives in diffuse gas, diffuse hot gas, diffuse ionized gas in intergalactic space. It hasn't been able to collapse to form galaxies at this stage. Some of it will in future. Much of it will stay in intergalactic space. And we've known about the existence of the gas theoretically for some time, but it's only been in the last 5 years or so where we've been able to detect it directly. But it is that gas which is responsible for tearing at the neutral gas that's been residing in these two dwarf galaxies.
That's Professor Lister Stavelli-Smith from the University of Western Australia node of the International Centre for Radio Astronomy Research. And this is SpaceTime. Still to come, a new study suggests volcanic eruptions may have delivered hidden ice to the Martian equator. And later in the science report, Moscow successfully tests a new nuclear-powered, nuclear-armed cruise missile, which could be a complete game-changer for geoglobal politics. All that and more still to come on SpaceTime. A new study suggests explosive volcanic eruptions on ancient Mars may have transported water ice to equatorial regions of the Red Planet. The findings, reported in the journal Nature Communications, are based on new computer modelling. The authors suggest that these eruptions could well have led to conditions that allow these ice deposits to still exist under the Martian surface today. The Red Planet's already known to have an ice-rich surface. But the majority of these ice deposits are expected to be found towards the polar regions of the planet. However, recent measurements in equatorial regions have detected elevated levels of near-surface hydrogen, and that could indicate the presence of bulk ice below the surface. Now, if this is all verified, it raises the question of how this ice originated in these unexpected areas. And one potential explanation now being explored involves explosive volcanic eruptions. Using a planetary climate model, Surya Hamid and colleagues tested this hypothesis by simulating explosive volcanic eruptions that are known to have occurred on Mars between 4.1 and 3 billion years ago. Their modelling showed that water vapour released during these eruptions could have frozen in the cold Martian atmosphere, triggering ice precipitation and leading to an accumulation of up to 5-metre thick ice deposits on the Martian surface during a single 3-day eruptive event. And if buried under dust or volcanic debris, the ice could have persisted for long periods. And that means it could still be present below the surface of equatorial regions of Mars even today. The findings also suggest that the release of sulfuric acid into the Martian atmosphere during volcanically active periods may well have plunged the planet into a global winter, in turn allowing for the accumulation of ice for a sustained period. The conditions predicted by these models in the event of multiple volcanic eruptions over time could help explain the detection of elevated near-surface hydrogen in equatorial regions of Mars, with implications for human exploration of the red planet when people finally get there in the next decade. This is SpaceTime. And time now to take a brief look at some of the other stories making news in science this week with a science report. Moscow says it successfully tested a new nuclear-powered cruise missile, which could be a complete game-changer for geoglobal politics. The 12-metre-long 9M730 Burevestnik, or Storm Petrel, is launched using a detachable solid rocket booster in order to reach sufficient speed. Then an onboard nuclear reactor takes over. It may power a compressor first. Alternatively, it may be heating the air directly as the air is drawn through a forward-facing intake nozzle before it's expanded thanks to the heat of the nuclear reactor and is allowed to escape as high-pressure thrust through a rear-mounted nozzle. So basically, this is a nuclear version of a ramjet. The Kremlin says the unique weapon flew some 14,000 kilometres during a 15-hour test flight. The little intelligence we have on the weapon tells us that the missile will cruise at over 3,000 kilometres an hour, and it can fly as low as 50 to 100 metres above the ground. That's low enough to avoid radar networks. The revolutionary new weapon, which is known by the NATO codename Skyfall, is designed to carry a thermonuclear warhead of an as yet unknown yield. The Russian chief of the General Staff, Valery Gerasimov, says the missile is invincible to all current defences, with an almost unlimited range, extended loiter time and an unpredictable flight path. And Norway's intelligence service has confirmed that it did detect the test flight of what appeared to be a new Russian low-flying cruise missile late last month. Russia's President Vladimir Putin first announced the development of this missile back in 2018. Years of testing and several significant failures, including at least one which saw the release of radiation, have delayed the project. Now, 7 years later, the announcement of a successful test flight comes as Russian forces continue to attack Ukraine, slowly gaining ground as they grind through Kiev's defences. The idea of nuclear-powered missiles has been around since the 1950s, with the United States' Project Pluto. However, its radioactive exhaust plume made the weapon undesirable for Western powers. And the news from the Kremlin doesn't end there. Putin's also just confirmed that Russia has successfully tested the Poseidon Doomsday Torpedo, a nuclear-powered underwater weapon said to be even more powerful than the Sarmat ICBM. Poseidon is designed to carry a 2-megaton thermonuclear warhead, and it can travel across oceans silently, hiding on the seabed until needed, and then exploding, generating a 500-metre-high radioactive tsunami capable of levelling coastal cities. In response to the Kremlin's latest announcements, US President Donald Trump has announced that the United States will resume nuclear weapons testing. The 2025 State of Climate report has been released, revealing that Earth is now hotter than at any point in the past 125,000 years, with 22 of 35 vital signs now at critical levels. The findings, reported in the journal Bioscience, show that despite surpassing 1.5 degrees Celsius warming, scientists stress that urgent action could still prevent the worst outcomes. The report outlines high-impact solutions, ranging from reforestation to clean energy and education, all of which could help reduce projected emissions. Paleontologists have identified a complete mature skeleton of a nanotyrannus, or dwarf Tyrannosaurus, putting an end to a long-running dino debate. The few nanotyrannus bones that had previously been found were all thought to have come from juvenile Tyrannosaurus rexes. But a report in the journal Nature shows that these latest findings solidifies Nanotyrannus as its own distinct species of theropod dinosaur. The authors say Nanotyrannus weighed up to 10 times less than T-Rex and that they coexisted with their larger cousins at the end of the Cretaceous era. Legacy Media have unearthed an old study which claims to have found an apparent relationship between fasting, vegetarianism, and psychic abilities. The study recruited 154 participants who regularly fasted and 804 vegan and vegetarian participants. The subjects were mostly women, recruited through Facebook special interest groups, with almost 3/4 of them being college-educated. The study's authors claim there was a significant correlation between long periods of fasting and anomalous psychic experiences and abilities. They also claim to have found that vegans and vegetarians do better with anomalous psychic abilities than carnivores or omnivores. But as Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics points out, the study was flawed from the very start.
It's a study that's been recently publicised, a paper published in the Journal of Parapsychology, which is a journal that tries to investigate paranormal, parapsychological, psychic powers and that sort of stuff. From a scientific perspective, there's a lot of criticism of a lot of things in parapsychology. One is that it starts off from assumptions that this is real, and that's one of the issues with this study that they did of a survey of fasting and vegetarians and the ability to promote psychic abilities. I'm not a vegetarian, so obviously I don't have psychic abilities. I'm a carnivore through and through. Obviously that disqualifies me, but this study has a few issues that you can see instantly just from the summary of it without even going into the deep database. One, it starts off by assuming that psychic abilities are real. So it doesn't say, are they real? It just says, yes, psychic abilities are real. Now let's find out if fasting and vegetarianism affects it. Well, that's off to a bad start because there's been no evidence to prove that these things are real. No compulsive, definitive evidence. Despite the efforts of people over the last, getting close to 150, 200 years of people trying to figure this out. The survey was self-nominated, so it wasn't a random survey. So someone comes to you and says, I'm doing a survey on psychic abilities. Would you like to put yourself forward for this study?
The only people who are going to agree to that are people who already believe in that sort of stuff.
That's exactly right. Exactly right. So again, the study assumes it's real. The people who are doing the survey not only probably assume it's real, they probably claim to have the powers anyway. There's no blinding to it. So the respondents knew the purpose of the test and they could assume that their food intake, when they asked about it, was relevant, naturally. They did not cover individual differences in psychic ability, assuming there is a difference, or the people's ability to stick to their diets even. I mean, this is all self-reporting. Didn't stand over them and say, have another carrot. They don't have that chop, don't have that steak. So it's just self-reporting. They didn't ask how psychic are you or are you really staying the diet. And at the end, the researchers admitted that other factors might come into play. Wow. So in other words, it's pretty poor. So apart from that, though, it's great. Apart from the fact that the whole attitude is wrong, the survey people are badly chosen, the process was poor, didn't actually cover a lot of things, and there might be other things involved. And of course, like all these surveys, they end up with a rule that more work needs to be done. So, and that's
you
what they all
and
end up
I know
saying.
the only real proof of psychic ability is your pet dog or cat when you have to take them to the vet and they know.
We had a pet dog who used to know when he was going to be taken for a bath.
Yes.
And he used to go and hide under the house. He used to drag him out. And we thought we had no indication what he was doing. I don't know. He was just clever. And pets are a lot cleverer than you
I have
think.
a dog that would eat anything out of the garbage. But as soon as you put a tablet in his meat, all of a sudden he's Gordon Ramsay.
Very clever. I don't know how they do it. They're gorgeous things, and yes. But I mean, that's the psychic ability, or they just don't like doing things. And but anyway, this psychic survey, vegetarianism, and hit the buzzer and say, no, try again. But don't ask for more money to do it. Thank you very much until you get your protocols correct.
That's Tim Mendham from Australian Skeptics. And that's the show for now. SpaceTime is available every Monday, Wednesday and Friday through Bytes.com, SoundCloud, YouTube, your favourite podcast download provider, and from spacetimewithstuartgary.com. SpaceTime's also broadcast through the National Science Foundation on Science Zone Radio and on both iHeartRadio and TuneIn Radio. And you can help to support our show by visiting the SpaceTime store for a range of promotional merchandising goodies, or by becoming a SpaceTime patron, which gives you access to triple-episode commercial-free versions of the show, as well as lots of bonus audio content which doesn't go to air, access to our exclusive Facebook group, and other rewards. Just go to spacetimewithstuartgary.com for full details.
You've been listening to SpaceTime with Stuart Gary. This has been another quality podcast production from Bytes.com.